Welcome to the Above Center Leadership Podcast. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Allison, and this is our chance to learn from leaders who know how to get results while staying above center.
Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode of Above Center Leadership. I am thrilled to be joined by an incredible leader and also a good friend, Brenda Becker. Brenda, thank you for being here.
Well, I'm honored to be here. This is like being a rock star for the other rock stars in the room.
Well,
thanks.
Yeah, Allison and I are like, we'll take that. That's great.
Yeah.
So above center, it's a mindset about showing up with clarity and confidence, and no matter the circumstance. And so when I think about you, Brenda, you really are one of the best I know when it comes to helping organizations navigate change, and then also doing it on a personal level. So before we start talking about your leadership style, would love to ask you and start the conversation about how you personally stay above center and any advice you have for our listeners.
Well, I think for me, it's how do I show up every day? So my core belief is treat others how you want to be treated. And it's very, very simple if you behave that way. And so kindness just goes a long way. So I try to every day lead by example, lead with empathy, make it less about me and more about we. So I go into the mindset of I want others' opinions. I want other people to provide me with their thoughts, their diversity of thoughts. I don't want everybody to think like me. So I think when you do that, you develop that culture and vision for a team to show up every day just as I am.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes from like when I interact with you, like I do feel this sense of calm confidence. And then when other people aren't like that, like what did you do to maintain your energy at the right level before you start interacting with other people?
So just mean from a personal standpoint, I just really try to take care of myself. So if I'm taking care of myself, I work out, I eat well, I have a lot of great friends. I'm a relationship builder. So for me, having those connections is really important so that I'm grounded. And I think that I didn't go put myself through college to be mediocre. I want to be great. So I want to show up that way. And so if I show up that way, that gives me the confidence to give other people the confidence to speak out, to be themselves, be authentic. This, what you see is what you get. So, sometimes I think we all have imposter syndromes at times, but I just try to remind myself that I know what I'm doing and my opinion matters just as much as anybody else's. And so I do seek out with my teams and other people, what are they thinking? Give me your thoughts. And that builds confidence for them as well.
Brenda, one of your favorite quotes is be who you are and be that well, which exactly describes what how you describe yourself. So how do you do that where you show up and you do you well? Like, how do you do you well?
Well, it's just an interesting story about that quote. My children went to Catholic school, and the high school, that was their mantra every day. It was a quote by St. Francis de Sales, be who you are and be that well. And I use that with them when they're going through tough times, like remember who you are. But for me, I'm sticking to my core and I'm leaning into my strengths. So we all have unique talents. And how do you accept those talents? And I ask people all the time, what's your superpower? My superpower is building relationships and helping develop others and building strong teams. So we can't be good at everything. I'm bad at math. I still count on my fingers. So when I build a team, I know what my core strengths are. I know what I do well. And I also know what I don't do so well. You have to be aware of that. Doesn't mean we don't have growth mindsets. We try to get better. We take on challenges. We learn new things. But what I try to do is counterbalance. I think a good team is when you counterbalance each other. So I count on my fingers. Somebody else does the budget. I don't do the budget, So that is what that is constantly reminding yourself, who am I? What am I good at? I don't have to be good at everything. And when times are tough, trying to remember what that is. And that kind of to your point earlier, Marcy, was confidence. If I remind myself that I'm good at something, I think we even try to, when kids are growing up, find something that they're good at. They try 15 things and they feel really down. Find that one good thing they're good at.
One thing I love about whenever we're talking about having conversations like this and remind yourself who you were when you were that little kid trying things, like kids just, without any sort of imposter syndrome, they just try new things. And then
Right.
when they don't fail, like, well, I didn't like that one. I'm not doing the school play again, or whatever that may be. And it's like, I wish we never lose that art of just going for it. And if it doesn't work out, we're like, okay, somebody else, that's somebody else's lane.
Yeah. But, you know, it doesn't mean you can't try to develop yourself in other new areas. But I always go back to, I'm really good at this. I know how to do this. And, I always say to folks all the time is, if somebody was going to write a one pager about you, what would it say? And if you really think about that, that helps you build that brand too, right? So if somebody says, Brenda, what's your superpower? I would say, it's building relationships, meaningful relationships, and it's lifting others up and helping people. I love that. I'm passionate about it, and I'm good at it. I'm not so good at X, Y, and Z, but in that one pager, I have integrity, right? I lead with my values, how I treat others. So I think people need to think about, if somebody's going to write that one pager, which would you want to stay in? I think that will help build their confidence. Realize, well, yeah, I'm good at this and I'm good at that, and this is how I live my life. These are my values.
And it's such a powerful thought and such a powerful exercise because it's not you write your own manifesto. You're really asking that question, like, how are others seeing you? Like, how are you showing up for them? And if they were to write it, do you like what they're writing? Because, we always have the ability to start that new thing today. And whether that's new way of treating people, new way of being back to who we are more often. And somehow in our busy, we forget that we can do that.
Right, right. We all get caught up in the minutia.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm loving about from this conversation is the more you emulate and just saying with just utter confidence of like, this is who I am, I'm good. It creates an expectation with other people. And then at the same time, you're like, and I'm not good at this, which is where you're good at that, which is why I want to ask you your perspective. It gives them permission at any age or any sort of experience of people that are on your team to contribute. And knowing that when they leave the office that day, like what they do matters because they felt like they contributed. So I'd love to ask a little insight about how you do lead the team. So when it comes to change, I know you're a lobbyist and you're in Washington, D.C. You've been, everywhere from
Crazy
strategic,
town.
yeah, crazy town.
Crazy
But
town.
when things are, changing, how do you help people, stay above center in their and confidence in their work and that what they do matters? Any strategies you're
Well, I look
tapping
at
into?
today is constantly changing right now. You look at even what's going on here in Washington, the first 100 days are today. Like, there has been so much change. Somebody asked me the other day, do we need neck braces from whiplash? And I say no, and how do you do what you're doing? And, as a team, I lead the team by, okay, we need to focus on what's important. We need to look at how this impacts us, whatever change it is in any organization. How do we use what we do well to navigate that? We don't have to defend things. We don't have to, but we have to navigate what is being asked of us, whether it's, structural change, we just got, we got to watch our expenses now because of tariffs. So, my thing is to lead by, first of all, communicating what's going on, laying out a vision of what that means for us, and then bringing everybody in the team of how we're going to accomplish that. And what are people's ideas? What are people's thoughts? I think it's very important to not be that person that walks in the door and just say, okay, this is the change and this is what we got to do and this is how we're going to do it. I think it's better to get participation by the people that will be affected by that change. And so that's how I go about it. And I empower people to say, okay, what part of this, can you take part in or take charge of? I don't want to be in charge of everything. God forbid.
You don't want to micromanage. I'm not
No,
sure
well,
what's wrong with you there.
Allison, that comes with time too. I mean, as a younger manager, nobody teaches you how to be a manager, right? It's like trial by error. You make a lot of mistakes to become, and a manager is different than a leader. If you don't have any followers, you're certainly not a leader, right? It's like a man walking in the woods or a woman walking in the woods with like nobody there with them. It's just taking a walk by yourself. So it's really important that you bring those people along with you. But I just recall back in the old days, we just, it was all about me and my ego and, you know, trying to figure it out all by myself because I thought I had to. And I keep telling my children right now that go through their struggles with new jobs in their 30s is it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go to others to find out maybe there's a better way to do it or they can be helpful in your thinking. I think everybody thinks they have to do it by themselves. And that's, not, it's just unproductive at the end of the day. So once I learned it was more about we, than me, I think my life got better. I think I became a better leader. I became a better manager of people. I didn't think I had to do it and they're feeling frustrated because they wanted to do it. A perfect example of that is somebody came in as, could you go to this meeting? And I want, and I finally looked at her and I just said, well, if I go to all this stuff, why do I need you? Go. I don't care what title you tell them. Just go do it. Show up. You're the expert in the area. And so that was kind of one way for somebody else to look at it.
Yeah, it is interesting when you have so many different dynamics with each person, and half the times they just need permission to believe in themselves and take the leap and go for it. And I think that's it's such a good story because they're like, hey, you got it. You're the expert, and you give them permission there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So, and talking about like we always feel that the first 90 days of an executive starting a job is just coincidental. Today is the first 100 days of the
Yeah,
office in
interesting.
2025.
He's
What
changing the world.
changing the world? So when you think about anybody, whether you're hiring a new leader, with your company, or whether you are stepping in a new role, whether it's a board member or something like that, you kind of have this window of making a first impression and really kind of capturing I always say the hearts and the mind. You want to build trust, but you also want to build the intellectual confidence of like where you're going to take the team. Do you have any sort of advice you have for leaders when they're taking on a new role, like how to make sure they navigate the first 90 days well?
Well, I would say don't walk in the door and think you know it all, because that's the worst thing that you can do. I think when I walked in, I was just recently, a couple years ago, was my newest thing being appointed to a corporate board was learn, listen and learn, ask questions. It's okay not to open your mouth right away, right? That's where the confidence is. They brought me on, they appointed me to that, or they gave me, I earned roles, but I earned that role for a reason. So I'm already at the table, right? So when you walk in, I I get to know all the board members, or I get to know all the people. When I started here at Boston Scientific, go around to all the leaders of the different business units and say, what's keeping you up at night? What do I need to know? What's important to you? And that's how you start building that relationship and trust. But if I come in there and say, well, this is how we're going to do it, and you've got 5 days to give me this information, and they've already tuned me out.
Right.
So I think when people try to walk in that door, kind of you were talking about change earlier, and you just say, well, this is just the way we're going to do it, and they try to make changes too quickly in an organization, it just backlash.
Yeah. And even if your instinct of the change you want to do is still the same one you do after you listen to everybody, the difference is one, you have people with full buy-in because they're like, yeah, I've shared my opinions and they're a part of making that change because the change is
Right.
verified, or you have chance to influence it. But the one mistake I've always seen too, there are people that pretend to go through the motions and pretend to care to build trust. They ask questions like, what keeps you up at night? And then minutes later, they're like, well, Joe down the hall, what's keeping him up at night is this. And it basically reveals something that
Yeah.
could be kind of in confidence. So it's not to listen to share and show that you know what's going on. It's really to listen, incorporate, and then start your plan to move forward collectively in that we style.
And when people are telling you things, act like you're hearing it for the first time, even if you've heard it a million times, because you don't want to cut off. They're coming to you to provide you what they're trying to play a role. They're trying to add value to to the organization through the leader. And if you act like oh, I already knew that, I already knew that, nobody's going to tell you anything anymore. So I always say, oh, tell me more about that. Or, ask another question is, thank you so much. I didn't see that today, even though I might have read it at 5 minutes before they walked in to my office. And I think it's really important to ask people for feedback as you're new. Just like, give me more, to help you be self-aware. I think feedback is a gift. And I think people take it as a criticism. But, even after this podcast, I went, did I do okay? How could I have said that better? Like we all need to be self-aware and ask for feedback because we can't improve or we can't change the way we make impact or change the way we are seen by others if we don't ask for that. So I think as a leader, it's important too.
Yeah, that's so insightful for like your leadership is very approachable, very intentional with how you're going to lead people to be great. And then also that feedback loop, how I'm hearing you talk about it, it's like genuinely listening to it, making them feel great that they're sharing this. Because sometimes it's like I imagine you reading the same thing that they come in and tell you the same thing. And the headlines are pretty obvious for everybody, but the content behind why they think those headlines are important is unique to every single person. And
Oh,
so
that's a great point.
yeah, if you just run on the headlines, you're like, yep, me too. And then you can kind of quickly move on to the next meeting. You're missing the opportunity to understand how that person thinks and how they feel, how they, make decisions based on that headline. Like all those types of things are still unknown to the new leader. And so I've never really heard it explained how you explain it, but within seconds, I'm like, what an excellent point. Like letting them know that you're hearing this as if it's for the first time, as if like the way they're going to bring it is so new and unique. I'm sure people that have that experience, with a leader that does that, they go home like very confident that they're a part of the mission for the long
God, I
term.
gave a great information today,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
whether I've heard it or not, I'd let them believe that they gave me
Right.
that information. And sometimes it is. I
Yeah.
don't know everything. I
Or the
can't
fact
claim
that
to.
said, yeah, and it said, then if it's said like 10 times by 10 people, it doesn't matter. We're at the same headline. It's like, well, this one's really important. You're allowing them to share.
Exactly. So the other thing I would say on so when I sat in a board meeting, we don't manage a board, or sometimes you're in roles you don't manage something, but you can ask questions. So when you don't necessarily maybe agree, or you're like, I'm a little iffy about what she just said or he just said, you can just say, tell me more about that. Or, so that you're not asking like, well, I don't agree with you, but just say, tell me more about that. Help me understand better what you're thinking on that. And I think that helps people build confidence. Oh, they want to know more. They're not criticizing me. They're not telling me that's a bad idea. So I think that's really, really important too, when you're walking into a room or somewhere for the first time, that you're not acting like, I know it all, and that was a stupid idea. There's no stupid ideas.
I love when people add and also to a conversation because that keeps the ball rolling forward. So when you start, like somebody will bring something up and it's maybe something that other people already know, but when you can add an and also, it goes deeper and it requires the audience to continue thinking about it in yet a different way because each person approaches every single issue from a slightly different perspective. There's not a monolith of people. We are all individuals. So by adding an and also to a
I like that.
conversation, it will keep it going and it will require people to add more value.
Well, we need that diversity of thought. So when you look at the environment I'm in today, very highly political, we have both sides of the aisle. And so my team, it's all Republican right now, but I don't just get rid of the Democrats and hire Republicans. I need that other perspective at the table all the time. And it's going to flip again. And so I think it's really important that or, like, well, that's your opinion. Well, wait a minute. We need to hear this voice in the room. And Marcy, you've worked with us and our team on that exact thing, by how do people think and how do you bring that out in them? So that's really important to have at the table. So I agree with you. I like that. Say the and the
And also, and
Yeah.
also.
and
And
also
also, yeah.
also
Well, I'm going to say and also to
and
Brenda's
also
point.
and
Now it's going to
also.
be addictive for the rest of the
I
show.
know we're gonna do it.
But and also with the diversity of thought, what I love about that, so in today's society, if people are talking politics, it ends up being a clash. And that used to be, talking politics used to be a little more normal around the dining room table or around the office cooler and things like that. Now it ends up being a little bit more of someone's right and someone's wrong. So as you were talking about your team and keeping both sides of the aisle there and adding and also what do you think about this point? It really helps people think differently because about their narrow I'm right point of view and forces them to listen, think differently because at the end of the day, we all actually want the same thing. We all kind of want the same results. How we go about doing it is differently. So I love how you do that. Can you give us a little more insight on how when you have like two different people on your team that have different approaches to handling things or different opinions about how you guys are handling something, how do you resolve conflict to help them both be better leaders and listeners and everything?
Well, I have been in meetings where people were talking over one another, and I've had to stop them and say, "You're talking over one another. Let's listen." I did it in a board meeting not long ago. I took a risk by doing that, but and we went into executive session and I just said, people need to listen better because we're not really hearing what people are saying because people are talking over one another. And I was but it put people, it was feedback for the group that we have to. So here in our office, we don't have a lot of conflict. We might have difference of opinion, but we just work it out together. We sit at the table and work it out. We had an issue this morning that we really were like, what should we do on this? And there were a little bit different opinions. So I just kept asking different people, well, where are you on that? If they weren't speaking up to make sure we had consensus on how we were going forward. So you have to, my opinion or my approach is to make sure that I am asking others in the room and not just listening to the loudest voice. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times the loudest voice is the one that sometimes wins because they're willing to speak up. I think I've learned through years of being with this team, there are some people that need more time to think about something. So you have to then go to that blue green or the red yellows, I want to participate, I'm going to talk fast and I'm going to think quickly. And others that are just pondering it, I want the ponders to speak up at some point. So I seek them out.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. And I think kind of in the beginning when we were having this conversation, we were talking about like that calm confidence is you as a leader where you are, it's not needing to react or overreact because conflict is just literally two people with different points of views having some anger behind it. And that's where the conflict comes from. But when you think about diversity of thought or opinion, it's just two different opinions. And you're
Right.
trying to see where the alignment is. And so that's not contentious at all. So when you have that calm confidence, it's easier to be like, let's hear from this person, let's hear from that person, and creating that environment where everybody's listening to each other and things like that.
It's hard. We all have our personal experiences, our passions that we draw from.
Mhm.
What we've tried to do here is say, okay, we all have personal opinions about whatever social issue there is, divided issues. But when we're here in this organization, and I think people should think about that with their own, what's in the best interest of the organization that I'm working for? Not Brenda Becker's, not, Marcy Stout's, what is in the best interest of the organization and put that hat into the ring. And that's how we work here. And that's kind of the culture we've said. This isn't about us personally, even though we're bringing our personal thinking to the table to come to the best outcome. We want that. But at the end of the day, this isn't, a divided issue, which we could name many of them right now, socially, that have kind of overtaken a lot of the space in the room. It's the elephant in the room most of the time.
Mhm.
So we have to coach through our organization because we've become the center of the universe here right now because government is ginormous right now. We have to keep that calm because if we don't keep calm, everybody is going to be like, wow, if Washington and the team, if Brenda and her team are, blowing up, that's not going to help anything. So we just
Mhm.
try to stay calm because it's the right thing to do. It's the right culture to create when times are tough.
Yeah, that reminds me that the only thing constant is change, right? So we need to stay in the center so that as change happens, we don't shift. We don't allow the external factors to change our own above center thinking, because staying above center isn't just about being happy. Staying above center is knowing how to react to scenarios that want to pull you below center, where you do get anxious, where you do get excited, where you want to be heard and you want to be louder and you're passionate. But it's about managing all of that so that other people see you in the way you want to be seen and not in the way that could be detrimental to your own sort of being, your own health for that matter.
I think that I wear my emotions on my sleeve sometimes. Probably not shocking. We all do. We have our moments, where I have to have a little, okay, take that out of the equation. But I think you hit the nail on the head. People just want to be heard. And if they don't feel like they're being heard, that's when the passion and the emotion comes out. So if as leaders, we listen, again, going back 2 years, one mouth, if we listen and let them be heard, even if we don't necessarily agree or that's not the direction we go, we heard that point of view. And you say, I heard you. You just said this. However, people just, even with our kids, right? They just need somebody to listen to them. They don't need us to fix the problem. They just need to be heard. If they're not heard, then they go into extra anxiety spin.
Mhm. Well, I always think, you have, say the Supreme Court, and you have people from different lenses and backgrounds and everything. But when people are presented the same information with facts and with depths and all that stuff, like minds can get on the same page. Like you can put your background to the side or your political views, but you can come up with the same decision when it's kind of you allow everybody to be heard. So with you, as you're talking about your team, like letting people be heard, it does shift your understanding. It just opens a little bit of a window, even if you're still going to go down the path you wanted to. Having that person be heard could make you say, wait, there could be another way we go about this, or another way I talk with somebody else about it, because it's just so important that we kind of recognize, our brother always used to do this to me. Like when we would be arguing, he'd be like, you know what, Marcy, you might be right. And then he'd say, but you might be wrong. Just kind of leave me
Which
with
one
that.
is it?
True, true, but I'm right this time.
I
But
know.
it's just true that, it's really diversity of thoughts. And the other thing I always love about you is you said this in the beginning, but like knowing who you want to be more often, like know your brand, live up to that person you want to be, know your superpower, stay in that lane. And if you kind of stay in what makes you feel confident and impactful, and you make other people feel heard and valued around you, it's just like you're just kind of building moments of your day, no matter how stressful they may be, with people that are helping you be more successful while you're helping them be more successful. So I love that, our conversation today went there, because I feel like, it just, you can't overstate how important it is to stay healthy and true to who you are and work really hard every day, and like making sure you're standing up to being the person you want to be more often. And that's what people expect. And if you're in the right lane, good things
Right.
will happen. You can figure that out.
Well, I think that I have been in an organization where that skill set that I brought to the table was not valued. So I think that for anybody listening here, make sure you find the right fit in what organization or what group that you belong with, because it wasn't until we brought in a management consultant that finally identified for me why I was miserable a lot of the time is because the other I were working on were up in this quadrant over here, and I was by myself down here. And he said, finally, somebody like said, you all need her to meet you in the middle with what she's bringing to the table. They weren't valuing relationships. When somebody said to me, oh, you need to transfer your relationships to so-and-so who's now running this. And I said, well, I'm happy to introduce him, but you don't transfer relationships, you build relationships. But that was, so as you can hear me, that was a huge disconnect. And I was there for a very long time. I liked the external people I worked with and what I was doing, but it was every day a clash of making me feel like I didn't know what I was doing almost. It was like, because you're not a policy wonk. Well, no, I'm not. I'll admit it. It's not my thing. You all are policy wonks. So you need that in the middle. So people need to find the right fit for themselves and need to trust their gut on that. It's okay not to fit somewhere and go find out where you do fit, where you are valued. Not that everybody's like you, but they value what you're bringing to the table, whether you're a good budget person, you're a good financial person, you're, good at data, or you're good at marketing, whatever it is that your superpower is, that it's valued where you go, because you will be miserable if it's not. But,
Yeah.
but knowing, right, knowing who you are and sticking to that core value is really important.
When also like adding, the point you made earlier too is just always asking for feedback. So that management consultant
constantly
came in, gave you the best feedback. So a third party sometimes can see
can
why it's a
validate.
repeat cycle. And so by having that confidence to ask for feedback, you weren't asking like, why am I right? Why are they wrong? But like literally asking for feedback, and you're like, that makes sense. And now I'm clear that I'm in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
helpful.
And then I stayed there, but I did move on and actually went over into the government. And one of the things we had talked about earlier is where have you been in a situation where it, was new and uncomfortable. And how did you deal with it? And I would say to anybody, just trust your gut at the end of the day and go back to that core. So I went over to the Department of Commerce. I had not been in government. I walked in there, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing here? Big imposter syndrome, imposter. Went to the first meeting with the senior staff and the secretary, and we're sitting around the table and everybody was real serious. I'm like, oh shit, and so we're going through the agenda, and he had some meetings with I did the legislative affairs members of Congress, and he's kind of reading through their bios because we didn't know what we were doing yet. And I go, oh, he goes, oh, he went to, I go, you've got a bonding moment. The whole room like started laughing. I go, okay, I used my sense of humor and I know what I'm doing here. I know why he needs me here. And that was just trusting my gut at that point. And then I built a really good team. I walked in, there's political appointees and career, walked into the career. I said, okay, if you were, how would you organize this department if you were in charge? They went, I think they worked all weekend. I felt awful about it. And they came back and they had this whole, structure of how they do. They've been there a long time. They knew what they were doing. And I said, okay, so what box do you see yourself in? And they told me, I go, done, you're in those boxes. They were loyal from that day on. And we built a really great team because we had a structure in place. They were where they had a good fit, where they brought value. And they were not political appointees with that new administration, but they were there steady. And I knew I could rely on them. So empowered them to be where they thought they would fit. So I took the opportunity of being like, oh my God, what have I done? Did I make a mistake? And turned it into, okay, go back to be who you are and be that well. And that's what I was. And didn't try to be somebody I wasn't.
Brenda, you know how to bring everything full circle, right? Know who you are and be that well. And then, we talked about the first 90 days, and then you talked about when you stayed somewhere when you probably should have been leaving. So we had that long term versus the short term, and then the short term, how it turned out so well because you listened and you trusted the people around you. And what a difference that can make when you allow yourself to do that. So I want to thank you so much for joining us in this Above Center Leadership podcast.
Well, I appreciate being invited, and everybody stay above the line and just believe in yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. So great to see you as always.
Bye, guys.
So how'd you like meeting Brenda?
Oh my goodness. I learned so much, but I do love meeting relationship builders. I always learn from them.
She's certainly one of the best. Like I love everything about her. She's such a role model and crazy good at what she does. I don't know if I told you this, but I did a workshop with her team, and it was like the above center workshop. And she and her a couple of people were like, okay, we're getting a piece of tape and we're putting it across like the office door. So when they walk in, everybody had to like go over the tape. So that way, like, you only come into this office if you're above center.
That's awesome because it's so easy to walk into a room. You have all the baggage that you brought with you, and you plop down, and that baggage sits on your lap, and it's heavy. And it's really about being intentional about staying above center.
Yeah. And seriously, Brenda is one of the best. She's so good about making sure she and the people she's around are above center. So that was fun, Allison.
I loved it. Let's make sure we listen and we trust.
Love it.
Learn more at thererebelcompanies.com.
That was fun.